Approved by AICTE for its technical programs and Bar Council of India for law programs. GIPS is currently offering postgraduate programs, that is MBA, MBA International Business, and undergraduate programs, that is BBLLB, BLLB, and BBA. GIPS has been graded A by National Assessment and Accreditation Council (NAC) in second cycle. It is an ISO 9001 2015 certified institute. GIPS has been rated A plus by State Fee Regulatory Committee, a fee committee of Government of NCT of Delhi, and rated highest grading by A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and GGSIP University. Uh, Also, GIPS has been rated number 2 by Times B School Survey consecutively for last 3 years. GIPS, through its Institute Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell, constituted under the guidance of Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, is organizing this webinar on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovation design. We are delighted to have with us today Dr. Vinod Dumblekar, founder and CEO of Mantis, which is country's only organization devoted solely to simulation games and other experiential forms of learning. Sir is a trainer, researcher, multidisciplinary consultant, and a management teacher. He has a postgraduate degree in business administration from Faculty of Management Studies, FMS, University of Delhi, and a doctorate in management psychology. He has over 4 decades of managerial and entrepreneurial experience in commercial and merchant banking, finance and financial services, information technology, and management education. Sir has held a variety of senior positions as bank manager, professor, president, and director in different organizations. He has written a book and has published papers on simulation games, marketing, finance, learning, and management psychology. His papers on simulation games were presented at and published for conferences at Munich, Atlanta, Singapore, Warsaw, and Bangkok. Sir is the only Indian in the International Simulation and Gaming Association, where he held the membership of Standing Committee and Advisory Committee. He is the founder of Indian Simulation and Gaming Association. He is India's most experienced authority and only researcher in software-based simulation games. It's an absolute pleasure to have with you today, sir. And I now request you to address the gathering, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. Good morning. At the outset, let me thank Gita International Business School for inviting me to this session on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovative design. We have often said, I think, before many statements that we make. And today is going to be a session where we are going to go deeper and further than that ordinary statement that we say, I think, so thoughtlessly. Before I go ahead, let me briefly introduce myself. I've been into a vast number of areas, such as the things that Mr. Depari has spoken about. I was an alumnus of the same school that Dr. Sheetal Chadda, who invited me to the session. We have been both the students of Faculty of Management Studies, and I've had the exposure and the experience of being with other people with a varied experience as well. Today, I bring forth to you my interests as well as my experience into play. I have been interested in thinking and learning and education, and in a variety of methods and processes that cause thinking, cause learning, and what happens next. That is the outcomes. For a long time, I have written papers that have been published across the world since the last 22 years. More factually, more physically, more tangibly, I've been into the design and demonstration and actually facilitation of simulations and games for learning and thinking. I hope I can bring all that experience into play today. Let me begin by distinguishing today's session. I won't show you any PowerPoint slides. PowerPoint slides sometimes are very boring, although sometimes they can be useful. They hold your attention, but they take you away from what I might be saying. I will talk briefly about definitions, examples, structures, features of things that I say. I'll probably bring in my own examples into play as to how I activated this, how I did that, how I failed over here, and so on. I can talk to you about the more famous case studies from IBM and State Bank of India and Toyota and all that, but I think you can read them from the internet. So let me begin by saying that these three topics, that is design thinking, critical thinking, and innovative design, are connected. As we go through, I'll explain how they're connected. First, I'll speak with the issues that concern us with respect to design thinking. Let's talk about what design is. Often, the common picture about a design is a picture, an image, or the shape of something, such as a vessel, or maybe a car, or maybe a piece of jewelry, and so on. But at the knowledge level, the experiential level, we must all be able to look at design as a way to solve a problem. I like defining things because that things makes me clearer about what I'm speaking about. So what do you mean by a problem? Well, a problem is a status that you think that you can do something about, which will improve that status tomorrow or next week or next month. That means you're instinctively recognizing that today that problem has a pain or has a cost attached to it. And if you can do something about it, you can make that pain go away or that cost to reduce or fall or go away or disappear. Therefore, bringing to yourself a certain amount of value by way of ease or comfort, or perhaps revenues and profits as well. That means when you solve a problem, good things happen to you. And therefore, coming back to design, you're actually making use of the idea of design to make things better, to make the world better. For the next session, for this session, I will try not to use the familiar terminologies of the textbook because I don't have that in front of me. And for me, it makes things clearer if I use words of one or two syllables only. So, when you say design a problem, we need to think about it. So, therefore, what do you mean by think? I found a definition and I found it was pretty good. So, I meshed it up, and this is what I think thinking is. Thinking is about collecting all the facts and the opinions and the beliefs and the perspectives and anything that has been said or written about that thing, put it together, process it. That means mesh it, remove it of impurities, make it bigger, make it smaller, reduce it, whatever you want, and try to extract meaning out of it. We have heard about abductive reasoning and sophisticated words like that. But I think the best way to think about it is whatever data that we have, information that we have, or that we can collect, we should be able to extract something that we understand. I think we should be limited by understanding, not by the sophistication of what technology or what others have to offer. That is thinking. But that's not enough. In design, you must use that thinking to be able to solve a problem. And the problem is not merely decision making, as you management students probably are thinking about, but you must go further. Decision making must solve a problem. That means it must make the world a better place. Now, I am taking a very huge definition here, that is the world a better place, but the world also includes you, the student, which means you can apply design thinking for your own personal problems and make it better for yourselves. Now, I can quote a couple of Nobel Prize winners like Feynman and Einstein, but I think I'll talk about it the right time. So what do you have design thinking? Let me use a few quick keywords so that from there I can go forward. Design thinking is a set of cognitive. By cognitive, I mean something that you can see and sense and feel. You can touch, and something equivalent to touch. You can smell it. You can hear it. So basically, whatever your senses can recognize is a set of strategic processes. That means something long term. That means if you can do something today, you can get the effect tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next week, or beyond the horizon. And finally, a practical process. Understand this. That means if it is not going to be something that you can convert into an action that produces value for you, then don't think about it. Go and read a book and watch TV. If design does not solve a problem, if it is not practicable, don't do it. It's not design at all. You're just wasting your time. Okay. By which design concepts, that means concepts must mean creating something new, something that solves a problem, something that creates products and buildings and machines and ideas and communicates, etc. Something new. Why does this impact on new? Because novelty itself has a value that is not visible or explainable easily, but it is there and suddenly comes out and faces you later as something of value. So novelty itself has a hidden value that you must acknowledge. At this stage, the first stage, when a new product is created, you do not see its value, but really, as a little, as with the passage of time, you realize that something new that was yesterday, it seemed to be better than most of the older products. And if you can do that, I think you have a good design in front of you. This idea is applicable to as much as to a product that you can touch, as to an idea which you cannot. Okay, let's go further. What is design thinking? It is also a collection of concepts identified through, hold on, what's a concept? A concept is basically a hazy idea about something. A concept is basically a hazy idea that does not have very clear boundaries or shapes, or people have different views about what it is. It's not clearly understood what it is. It's probably a word that everybody talks about, but if you ask him and force him or her to say, tell me what it is, he will not know. For example, you can ask everybody, what exactly do you mean by a common word like intelligence or leadership or mentoring or coaching or ability or skill? You'll find that most of them will be a little confused or short of the right words to explain what they are. So basically, these are concepts, which means you'll have to ask about 10 different people to write down what they understand. And then you can recompose them into something that you can understand. So a concept is a very hazy, broad idea about something. So design thinking is a collection of concepts. It's not just one. What does it do? These concepts come together by asking people about their opinions, by reading about them through studies and books and research, etc. Across the country. You may have to go beyond India today or beyond your small state or city to understand a problem that you've asked. Uh, so that the design activity, wherever it is, whether it is 10,000 years in the past or something that happened last week, is useful to you. That means it must solve a problem. Okay. Design thinking is not merely thinking. It stops just at the end of thinking, and after that is implementation. Now, this is a very strange case, but one way is it disassociates itself from actual action. Somehow, I think that separation keeps itself away from the responsibility in making some things happen, which is good because once you have the design, like the architect who makes a design for a building, he passes it on to the building engineer and say, here, you understand it, then do it. This way, he can transfer the responsibility of getting the product or the idea being made, the idea or the product that solves problems. Now, what exactly is design thinking more? I'm trying to give you different perspectives so that we can hopefully a little later think in terms of problems and see how we can apply this idea or the collection of concepts to find a solution. So therefore, it says it's a disciplined process. So if you were to say, I think, and then you were to give me a solution, I'm going to ask you, okay, did you apply a design thinking process here? Which of course is going to embarrass me because I did not. When I say I think, I'm just giving you a first-hand opinion that is built into my mind because of lots of things I read, I heard from people, etc. But I've really not really thought deeply about. It is applicable in any context. I said at the individual context, such as your problem, or that of a neighbor, or that of the country, or that of the state, or of the world, or something beyond. I'm sure we can use this to find solutions to this climate change and global warming and all that we can talk about. We are trying and we have succeeded to some extent finding solutions with respect to COVID-19 and all those problems that we've had. We have conquered things like the mosquito night bites that have caused us malaria, for instance, leprosy, etc., are things of the past. Although we may not have used design thinking as we understand them today, but I think the elements of them, elements of what they are, have been used in the past. Before going, I'll stop here. We can come to that later. Let's understand what are the steps in design thinking and how we can apply them to some common problems. Well, the steps are as wide or as many as you have followers or you have people who offer the steps as prescriptions. I heard about seven-step process for design thinking about 7, 8 years back. I will talk about later this one first, and then I'll talk about something a 4 or 5 step process which is simpler for you. The 7 step process which I called is DRIPSIL, DRIPSIL. They stand for the acronym Define, Research, Ideate, Prototype, Select, Implement, and Learn. Now, in these 5 steps, 7 steps, you will see that there are things like implement and learn, the last 2 steps, which later in the more revised versions of design thinking in the recent years have been dropped off or have been forgotten. Maybe the scientists and the researchers and the practitioners have realized that design thinking should be limited to the thinking part and not the implementation. So what do we have here? And define, it means define the problem very clearly, which means you need to put it down on paper, get the consensus of those people who are promoting or seeking help with respect to that problem, and get it ratified and say, yes, this is what we understand about the problem. But that is not enough. So therefore, you got to go to second stage. The second stage, the research stage. The research stage is about trying to find out everything about the problem and everything about other problems in other domains and perhaps in other countries and other times, and try to find out how did they solve the problem. Find out new technology and find out whether new technologies can solve the problem. If prices have risen, can you find a drone to supply the product in such a way that is cheaper? A third step in the design thinking process, this 7 step process, is ideate. When you ideate, you just sit around and probably do brainstorming, or maybe you can put up a discussion paper, share it with people, and ask them, what should you do next? Maybe all of them will say, do this, do that, etc. Sometimes the government does it. The government puts up a discussion paper, or SEBI and RBI are very often used to putting up and saying that, why can't we do this, etc. And then people come up with suggestions, and the suggestions are resolved or converted to a product later by way of a guideline or a statute or a law and so on. The first step in this process here is creating a prototype. It sounds very silly and simple, but actually speaking, when you look at a thing like a prototype, one thinks that once you have an idea, you can make a prototype out of every idea. But actually speaking, that's very expensive when you think about some of the products that we have. Suppose you want to make a new tractor or a new car. You are not going to make about 5 or 6 or 11 different kinds of cars and wait for people to say yes or no to that. So what you're going to do is you're going to prototype only in respect of those issues where you're not sure and we require other people's concurrence. Sometimes you require maybe other people's budget proposals and budget confirmations, because each prototype ultimately when it's converted into a product, it might require a huge budget outlay, or it might require some technological confirmation from other people. So therefore, you get into prototyping only in those areas where you need to seek other people's concurrence, especially where other people have authority over you. Often enough, your attempt is to be able to have as few prototypes as possible, which means these issues should be clarified at the ideation stage. The next stage, the fifth stage, is the selection part. Now, selection part under the newer versions of design thinking is the last stage. You select the prototype here, you give your reasons, and after that, the next stage is about implementation. So after you select, you get people who are stakeholders to say, I want this, I don't want that. Like for example, if you're an ad making agency and you're offering something to your client, maybe you can offer to him 3 or 4 different versions, and he can say yes. It's very easy because probably the ad making campaign, the prototype, in such a case is not very costly as compared to the real ad campaign. So therefore, here you have a clue. The prototype is usually followed when its cost is very small as compared to the final product. After that, you have 2 more stages. One is the implementation stage, and the last one is something that is not familiar to you. It talks about learning. Learning what? Why do you want to learn at the end of a long? I mean, Dripsel is very long. It's 6 stages before you come to learn. Why do you want to learn now after 6 stages have been completed? Well, it suggests that the Dripsel stage is not something that comes to an end. It suggests that it is reiterative. That means you can keep on learning all the time, and you must. Having produced a tractor for, let us say, 2020, the technologies would have changed in 2021 and 22. So you require a newer tractor in 2022. So you learn from that, you produce a better tractor, or a better car, or a better some whatever product you can think of. So learning is reiterative. And once you look at the initial 6 steps, such as define, research, ideate, prototype, select, and implement, you realize that many of these things are reiterative. That means if your definition is not clear, your research will have to look deeper, and then you may have to revise the definition. If your ideation you has a lot of confusion about it, you may have to go back to your research and try to find more answers to it. Today, most of the design thinking principles is stated in maybe 4 or 5 stages. The first stages is something called empathy. It's very fascinating to use that word. It's a psychological word that comes into this particular area. It broadly means the same thing. It means ask questions, find more ideas. It's basically another version of research. There's some voice coming up. Okay, empathy basically means finding as much information as possible, step into the shoes of other people who also feel this problem, and not merely collect data from off the internet and say this is the product or this is the problem. Empathy means deeper than that. Then, of course, you have definition. Definition here follows the research so that you have a clearer perspective of what the problem is and what opportunities you have to create a solution for the problem. The third stage is ideation, which creates a variety of options to you to convert the idea into something tangible. And of course, the last part is about solution, which comes from selection and converting and choosing one of the prototypes into a product for your use. Basically speaking, if you convert all these stages into English, it is very simple. If you have a problem that you want solved, you have to ask questions. Ask questions from many sources. Ask your neighbor, ask a person who's standing at the bus stand, ask your teacher, ask anybody you can think of. Read the books, browse the internet, collect information, write it down. Whatever you can think you can do, you do. Collect that information. Phone up your friend in Germany or London, etc. Collect data. Find one, mix them up, and find out which one is a good option for you. Maybe you can mix something that happened next door to you with something that happened in London and find a better option. You probably can make 3 or 4 different options out of this, and therefore you have a prototype. And then, of course, you can quickly choose depending upon the size of the problem that you have. Okay. What kind of problems could you solve? Well, typically speaking, design thinking is to solve a complex problem. If you're standing at the bus stand and you don't know which bus to take, you don't have to do a lot of research. You don't have to empathize with somebody. All you got to do is turn around and ask 2 or 3 people, and somebody, probably the first person, will have the right answer. as to which bus you need to take to go to, let us say, Connaught Place, and that would be enough. That's not complex at all. For that, you don't have to use a design thinking method. A design thinking method is for really something really very complex. Climate change is one, and I can quickly, off the cuff, talk about things like um, air pollution, which we have in Delhi pretty often. We have transportation. We have treatment of waste, that is public waste. We have drinking water. In Delhi, some parts of the city don't get drinking water. Some others do. Uh, then, of course, we have a transportation such as, mm, well, we don't get buses, we don't get trains on time, etc. And then we have a massive problem today, such as, for example, the COVID-19 and the answer to that, that is the lockdown. Probably, when you have time, you can verify and test the lockdown and find out whether it is a product out of design thinking principles and whether you can offer a better answer or solution to COVID-19 by using the principles. Uh, at this stage, I will I will wait for a minute or so and see whether you can come up with some problem where we can apply the design thinking uh, as a solution, as a prescription. May I hear from you? I've given you three, four problems already. For example, air pollution, public waste, uh, drinking water, transportation, etc. And we talked about climate change. If there are other large problems you can think of, probably can, if you could suggest, maybe we can have a public discussion in terms of these 5 or 7 stages and try to find out how we can solve them. Remember, the problem has to be complex. It cannot be simple like which bus can I take from Dwarka to Connaught Place. Yes, please. If listeners were to discuss something like this, I think the idea will become clearer. Design thinking is a huge idea. It's a simple idea. It's a disciplined idea as to how to face problems and how to solve problems, difficult problems. And one of the things that any manager, the manager is a role that the management student has to adopt after he leaves the course. Any manager would have to face up to. That means he has to solve problems. And design thinking is a disciplined prescription as to how to solve those problems. You can use this for choosing employment. I mean, which employer should you go to? Or choosing a location. You got a job. One job is in Dwarka, one job is in somewhere deep within Jabalpur. Where do you go? So these are complex problems, and complex problems are what design thinking can attend to. So if uh, the listeners here have a problem, please let us know. Let's talk about it quickly so that we can go to the other stages quickly. Okay, nothing? Okay, fine. I think probably the idea takes a little time for thinking as well. Even design thinking requires thinking to be able to go ahead. Um, so let me go ahead to the second topic of the day. I know I've taken a lot on the first topic alone because that has more meat to discuss. The other two topics, such as critical thinking and innovative design, are subsets of design thinking, not deliberately, but they help to elaborate and clarify design thinking better. I mean, they can be used as instruments to make your design thinking better and faster and more effective. So let's come to the second topic, that is the critical thinking. Critical thinking is basically an analysis of facts uh, to reach a judgment. Uh, Facts are, let me tell you very clearly, are very difficult to be very certain about. Um, for example, if you say that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, that's a fact probably for Earth, for this planet. If you were to go to some other planet, maybe it would be different because on some planets, a day is longer than a year. And some planets, the planet moves in the reverse direction. So probably it rises in the west. The sun rises in the west and sets in the east. I'm giving you some varied examples itself. So you need to test your fact before you go ahead. Now, when you do critical thinking, that is what you do. We are familiar with what is called the five W's and one H. That is, the W stands for why, what, when, where, etc., etc. You can check out what it is. And H, of course, goes to how. Uh, Critical thinking is an expression of intellect and intelligence. But then these words are also concepts, which means you need to verify and so on what exactly is the meaning with which you are trying to uh, go further on the topic. Unless you have clarity on that, unless you're very clear with the definition, don't go forward. So, what exactly do with critical thinking? With critical thinking, you are skeptical about what you receive. You first test it. You test it beyond a bias. If you say, I already know about it, then you suffer from what is called confirmation bias. Somebody has told you about something, you half read something, maybe 10 years, 20 years back, and you use that as a basis to judge or assess what you heard just now. Now, that is not critical thinking. Critical thinking means that you have to be suspicious about everything, and maybe you could go what we don't do typically. That is, you find that particular truth to be untruthful or to be a lie till you find it to be the truth. You need to verify it. That means you need to evaluate it for its real nature. And real nature often is under situations. There are scientists, economic Nobel Prize winners who have said that I can't describe one without knowing where the other one is. So, therefore, one situation is dependent on another. So, critical thinking makes you clear about what happens. For example, look at that nice man who becomes angry. I mean, he does not become angry often. Why is it that he's become angry? So, it's probably a situation. You have to find out what situation is. So, let me clearly use the words that probably might enhance our understanding of critical thinking. It talked about lack of bias. It speaks about factual evidence. It has to be self-directed. That means you must verify yourself, not with respect to what he said, she said, they said, etc. They might have said anything, but it is your meaning that is paramount when you do critical thinking. It has to be self-discipline. The discipline comes from you. How far, how deep are you prepared to go? It is self-monitored. That means you can do it today in half an hour, or you can wait for it for 2 days or next month. It's up to you. And of course, it is self-corrective thinking. That means what you knew yesterday, you must be prepared to say that was wrong. And today, you're prepared to accept the fact under new facts. You're prepared to correct what your earlier thinking was. So therefore, it also suggests that all the knowledge that you have is probably false in the face of new facts and evidence. Okay, let's go further. How rigorous are you? How determined are you to accept the fact that something was wrong in the past? Well, that takes a lot of strength. And believe me, it's not easy. But if you can get to that stage with small steps of improvement, I think you can take the big step in saying that I know I was wrong yesterday. That's it. It does not have to be with respect to apologies and all that, but merely a recognition that you are prepared to face what is called a fact, not a truth. Uh, how good are you at communication of what you think is critical or good or correct or whatever it is. That depends more on your ability than your attitude. So therefore, we are back to things like how lazy or quick you are to accept and tell somebody that he or you were wrong. Critical thinking, therefore, when you realize all this, you see that suddenly it is similar to what we called research or empathy in the design thinking stage. It is basically about asking questions. It is basically about correcting our point of view, not his or hers. You're not trying to teach somebody, you're not trying to convert somebody to your point of view of thinking. You're trying to verify whether a particular situation or a fact or a process given to you is adequate or effective or correct or not. So therefore, critical thinking is something like a module. You can simply fit it into that research stage in design thinking, and therefore you have a better and a more disciplined part of the design thinking stage itself. What else can it do? I think this is from my experience. A skill is basically based on an attitude. If you like to do it, you tend to do it better and you tend to do it faster. You want to do it more often. Your repetition about something is because you like it, unless, of course, somebody's forced it upon you. So, therefore, critical thinking is something that you need to, is about an attitude or a frame of mind. Um, there's a word for this that's called mindset, uh, which basically says it's a collection of your belief and it's a collection of what you like to do. It's based also on personality traits such as openness to experience, such as consciousness, such as the consciousness says that you want to be right, you want to be correct. And finally, about agreeableness. All these things suggest that you're open to new ideas, new experiences, even though they may actually be counter to what you currently believe. You are more open. So therefore, you are more tolerant about variety of things. I mean, you can be in dirty places, you can be in dirty, polluted areas, and still smile your way through. You should be able to. Sometimes one of the most strongest attitudes within the critical thinking umbrella is what is called openness to ambiguity. That is, you must be clear that ambiguity, chaos, uncertainty, all these things are natural to you. You don't mind them. So if you can do that, I think critical thinking on your part becomes easier. Uh, you can express yourself in visually when you do critical thinking. Probably you can convert it what you say or what you hear in the form of notes or doodles or workflow charts. Everybody's familiar with the workflow chart, the thing that we comes in textbooks with a circle and an arrow showing action and result. You can go deeper into project management, program management ideas, and pick up some things like PERT charts and work breakdown charts itself to explain to yourself that new idea that has come across to you, whether it is factual or not. You can be more critical in your thinking in terms of more pictures and images, videos, such as hierarchical charts, causal maps, mind maps, bubble charts. Bubble charts are video like things. You must Google and find out what they are. They'll help you think better. And of course, you can also draw by hand. Don't use the internet all the time. If you use it by hand, I suspect you'll learn maybe 10 or 20 times faster than what is available to you on the net. Okay, critical thinking also separates you from the crowd. It's a test to find out how different you are from others. Do you quickly agree with the remaining 90%, and whatever they say, you say yes and let's go? It's easier, it's more comfortable. Then you're not critically thinking. You are following something that you're following something that is more convenient. You want to get things through very quickly and suggestive of laziness. You don't want to finish the chapter, turn the page, and go on ahead. That's not critical thinking. You should be able to be different. Difference, indifference, being away from different, that does not mean you have to argue with people. You can hold an opinion and stay with that. That would be critical thinking. I can quote to you somebody who said, Robert Frost, he says, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, I can teach you all these things and talk about it, but if I don't tell you what critical thinking examples I have, uh, you will think that I am only a teacher. Okay, here are the things I do. Uh, in metro stations, when there are escalators and in airports, I don't use the escalator if it is possible. I walk. I walk all the way. So every station, I think I do about 60, 80, 90 steps all the way up, not down. Um, when I drive, I've stopped driving. So when I drive, I don't use the horn so often as the majority of the population anywhere, any city do. So you can try being different. In being different, I think you show signs of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking, design thinking is practical. That means it moves towards an action, a product. But critical thinking is more cerebral. You can't see much action here. A lot of things happen here. But you must realize that this is what drives your body and your mind and your soul. This is where everything starts. So if you can uh, look at life itself differently, look at all the experience that come to you, and you're able to summarize and make judgments for yourself rather than be driven by others. I think those are examples of critical thinking. I will stop you, except for I will stop here, except for one observation here. If you're excited by what you see around you and not shocked or angry, I think you are a critical thinker. So, if I may have examples, if I may have some reactions from you quickly, probably we can clarify things far better. I already know the topic. I've practiced the topics many times. I have examples to tell you, but I don't have the time. But if you can hear something from you, I think it'll be easier. And maybe we can look at the problem from your point of view. Before I go on to the third topic, innovative design, I'll stop for a moment, a minute only. If you can hear some responses from you, that will be nice. Okay, no questions, no reactions, so I'll go forward into the third topic. Innovative design. We often mix innovation and creativity. So let's clarify what each of these words are. Creativity is about the process of uh, making something new. Now, if you can apply it to solving a problem, we come close to what is design thinking as well. Once you convert that into a product, you have what is called an innovation. So therefore, the innovative part of innovative design merely means the product side of design thinking. That means we have a product that is different, but more than that, something that is useful for us, something that is practical, something that reduces our costs, increases our revenues, makes profits, makes us smile, reduces our pain, reduces our inconveniences, or whatever. Now you are seeing these things everywhere, but probably they have not been visible to you. For example, if you have seen the our DTC buses perhaps about 20 years back, I know probably you may have been, the students may have been just 3 or 4 years at the time. So let's come back 15 years back or 10 years back. The seats were bad, the buses were bad. Now we have better buses. The seats are very tough and firm. Nobody can reduce them or hurt or destroy them in any form. Something similar has happened to our railways as well. You got better trains. So you have things that have solved the problem of the past. The toilets in the railways, in the bogies, are far better than before. Although people try to make it dirty, however much we can try. Uh, I've seen, let's say, it's not much to do with design, more to do with innovation. In our parks where I stay, they were full of paper and plastic and this and that all the time. I remember I had to complain many times. Sometimes I complained about 15, 18, 20 times. Today, they are better. That means the innovation is seen in terms of a cleaner park, more trees, more greenery, and so on. So, innovation is basically something uh, that makes lives better. And it's not to do with parks or railway stations or buses alone. It is to do with your life as well, whatever you do. So, therefore, innovative design, let's mix the innovative part here and the design thinking together and understand what it is. It is merely something new that solves problems. It's probably the slight inverse of the design thinking. The design thinking leads to an innovative design. So you could say that the innovative design is basically one of the many prototypes that you make, out of which you choose one and you convert it into a product that is of use to you. So, how do you get to innovative design? Well, the steps you have seen in the design thinking process, where you research, you describe the problem, you research more, find many ways of solving a problem by mixing and fitting many solutions together. You come to many options, you extend those options into workable prototypes. That is a small portion of the larger things. We have a word for that. We call it simulation. That means, let us say, it's a toy car instead of the larger car, or maybe a small part of the car, which is a newer version. You make it work. Find out whether it works, whether it fits with the rest of the car, and so on. You test it. So therefore, you have the prototype, and then you go ahead to make it work. So innovative design is clear on the fact of novelty and utility. If something is not novel or something does not make sense in terms of its commercial viability, it must make value to you. It is not innovative. So, innovative things are around you in your neighborhood all the time. If you see a shop that has lasted in your neighborhood for the last 3 or 4 years, he has been innovative in some form or the other. In some form or the other, he has become better and better over the years, and he's different from the shops that have died in maybe 1 or 2 years before him. So your task is to find out what it is that makes him different. Here are some examples which you can find out. Here are some examples of innovative design so that you can learn many from these examples as well. You can look at liquor bottles. The liquor within them is probably the same. Maybe it differs only by maybe smell, a little bit of taste, but the bottles are different. They're shaped so attractively that you want it for the bottle alone. And once you buy the bottle, of course, you're justified. You don't want to go back on your decision or a purchase, and the sale is made. Similarly, perfume bottles. I mean, anything that's been kept in a bottle, you see how different these bottles are. I see bottles that sell coffee and bottles that sell water or soda water bottles as well. They are different from what we used to have different in the past. Look at the kind of pens we have today. Look at the kind of airtime and data packages that you get on your cell phone from Airtel or Vodafone or whosoever they are. They are different. They're different, and that difference helps the seller maybe to confuse you once in a while. Maybe that is partially the reason why some things sell. We may need to test this particular my hypothesis further, but you can verify. So, innovation makes today different from the past. And therefore, if you can make some things work for the future, which is vastly different from what we have today, you have an innovation that has worked. Your task is to make that. Your task is to make everything that you do, even in your personal life, different today so that tomorrow is vastly innovative when compared to today. That means there are more conveniences, it looks different as well. Once in a while, I suspected I wanted to make a bold statement suggesting that if all of us Indians together were told about how dirt and dust and paper and plastic on our public spaces like parks and streets, how we could, if you could communicate this to the larger audience, that these things look dirty and they defy the design of the place, I think we would have a more cleaner atmosphere environment around us. So, in innovative design, there are two or three key elements. One is the novelty of what you're going to make. Second is whether you can reduce the costs and the pains of whatever we are doing today. Third, whether we are creating more new value. We have about 5-6 minutes left, so I'll quickly summarize. From this particular session, you have got to find out what it is you are trying to extract and use. Are you trying to become more knowledgeable and smarter about the topic, about the three topics, that is design thinking, critical thinking, and innovative design? Or are you trying to build an attitude for it, an attitude to build something new, to solve problems, to become different, and so on? Or are you to become, or would you like to become skilled in it? The skill is based upon the attitude. So it's important for you to build a liking to do something. You want a cleaner space, you want a faster something, you want a cheaper something, you want a more beautiful something, you want a more effective something, you want to remove a process from something, etc. Most of the innovations that you look around are basically combinations. Your phone is a combination of maybe 50, 60, 80 different things that were there in the past. Similarly, you'll find lots of things being combined. So if you're thinking in terms of an innovation for the future, an innovation as a career move, I think the third angle that you need to look at is how you can mix things up and create something brand new to solve problems. How do you practice all these things? That is design thinking, critical thinking, innovative design. One, you start small. Two, you practice whatever you have heard about these things. You can't practice all the steps altogether. Third, you find somebody else who has done this and work with him or her so that you get into the act or the practice of doing things. Fourth, I think you need to find a big problem that you understand so that you can use it on your own. Then you'll have to repeat what you do. The point is, you don't want to become good because you do something once. This is not a classroom exercise. This is something that you apply for your life. So therefore, it is important for you to repeat the exercise till you become skilled at it. Skill comes out of repetition. So if you're going to take these small steps or any kind of activity to become knowledgeable or to build an attitude or to become skilled in design thinking, critical thinking, or innovative design, it's important for you to be able to do some things all the time, repeat them again and again, and not merely on weekdays or when you go to college. It is something that you need to do from Monday to Sunday throughout the year. And of course, you must be able to do the research. Research is not merely available by reading textbooks or listening to other people. We need to go out into the markets. There are a lot of action you can see. You need to go out in the bus stands and the railway stations where you can see people moving about. You will be able to feel their pains and their conveniences and the comfort. And therefore, you will be able to work and create solutions which other people will say, give me, I want to follow you. And of course, you must be able to find the answer to, and somebody asks you, you said, I think, what did you mean by that? What do you mean when you say, I think? Did you use design thinking steps to understand I think? Did you use critical thinking steps to understand them? And when you made a product, have you used innovative design to apply that? I hope my session has been useful to all of you. I thank Geetharathan Institute for having invited me, Dr. Sheetal Chadda in particular, and Mr. Tiwari as well.
Uh,
Thank you, everybody. Mr. Tiwari, all yours.
I request all the participants, in case they have any question, they can ask, sir.
Any questions, please let me know. Nobody asked earlier. I'm prepared to take questions even now.
But I think they were actually critically thinking about that too.
So I have a question. So you are on mute.
Please put up a video also, whosoever is speaking.
Pratham, you can go on, please.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my question is, as you talk about key critical thinking is uh, to understand yourself or to motivate yourself. But if we see as a business aspect, so is critical thinking is the most important thinking in business?
You said to motivate. No, it is not to motivate. It is not to motivate. Critical thinking is to search for data and to understand the problem.
Yeah, for example, if we talk about business, so if anyone told me, ki, okay, how you gonna do this? Okay, how you gonna raise your revenue of your business? So to searching that answer, it will motivate me.
No,
So
motivate comes much last. The question you have asked, you got to ask questions as to what business you are in, what are the products you're selling, who are the other people who are selling products, similar products, what are their prices, what is the special feature about your product, what is the USP, why are people buying their products, why are they not buying products, where are they selling their products, how, what is the technology going there? See, we are asking questions like that. And none of these things have to do with motivation. Motivation comes last. Once you do these things, you'll feel so excited that you found answers. Well, that itself is a motivation. You're not working for a motivation. Motivation is an automatic outcome. It is not
yes,
a
sir.
planned outcome. So
Yes, sir.
critical thinking about the process about asking questions differently. Differently means you ask your neighbor, you go and visit the competing company or shop and find out why he's selling and what he is selling, how he is doing his business, etc. You browse the internet for the products that he's selling,
Yes,
etc.
sir.
Critical thinking is about asking questions and finding answers.
Yes,
Sometimes you
sir.
have 100 answers, you've got to put all those 100 answers together and reduce it to 5.
Mhm.
And you've got to find your own way as to how to do that. It's a disciplined way of finding answers and putting it down. For example, my discipline is to write when somebody speaks. I've just written down one, I wrote motivate. And my first answer to you was to clarify that is not to do with motivation. So
Okay,
therefore, you
sir.
need to also create rules for yourself as to how to attend to that thinking process.
Okay, sir. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you.
In case anybody else has a question, they can ask. So, firstly, thank you so much for this continuous session. You just ran through three big concepts in a very short span of time, and thank you for that. So, with all of us seeking sustainable solutions to not only sustain in our lives right now, but also grow professionally in all the fields, conducive designs of solutions is an obvious approach. So I would take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude, sir, for you to taking out time and contributing to this session. Your insights have been enriching to the participants, I'm sure. With this, sir, I take this opportunity to thank you again and seek association in our future academic endeavors too, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Diwari. Thank you, Dr. Chudha. Thank you, Geeta Ratan. Good day.
Good day to you.
Thank you, sir.
Good day. Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.